You know that feeling? An important topic pops up, and you want to get the lowdown, but without feeling totally overwhelmed.
Mm.
Well, you're definitely in the right place. Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to understanding what really matters.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're diving headfirst into, well, the really fascinating world of sustainable materials.
That's right. I mean, look around. Everything we touch, everything we use, live in. It's all made of something.
Yeah.
But the traditional ways we get and use these materials, they have a pretty big impact on the planet.
Right.
So this deep dive is all about exploring those innovative, alternative, sustainable materials.
Exactly. Think of them as the smart solutions for a healthier planet, really.
Hmm.
They aim to cut down our need for resources that, can't be easily
We
replaced.
have resources, yeah.
And cut down greenhouse gases. We hear so much about those. And importantly, be easily recyclable or naturally break down when they're done.
At the end of their life.
Yeah. So our mission for you today is pretty simple. Quickly grasp the key ideas, maybe discover some surprising facts, and understand the different perspectives on this pretty vital subject.
And to help us do that, we're drawing from a recent article, Eco Breakthroughs, Sustainable Materials Transforming the Future of Our Planet.
Okay.
It gives a really good snapshot of, where we are now and the exciting directions things are heading in this field.
And we're really glad to have our expert here to help make sense of it all.
Happy to help break it down.
So let's start with the basics then. What are sustainable materials exactly, and why is there suddenly such a buzz around them?
Okay, so at their core, sustainable materials are really designed to be gentler on the planet.
Gentler.
Like you said, using fewer finite resources, minimizing those climate-changing gases, and making sure they can either biodegrade or be reused somehow.
So it's more than just using less stuff. It's really thinking about the whole journey of a material, from like where it comes from to where it ends up.
Precisely. Yeah, the whole life cycle. And this growing interest, it's not just some passing trend.
Right.
Industries, researchers, they're all realizing this is critical for innovation. We're seeing a real surge in both developing these materials and actually using them.
Which makes total sense. The big aha moment for me is realizing how directly this connects to, well, everything we care about, protecting the environment, making sure there are resources left for the future, cutting pollution. It all comes back to the materials we choose, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And the benefits.
Yeah.
They go beyond just the environment. Smart policies supporting this kind of sustainable development, they can actually lead to real economic advantage.
Interesting. How so?
Well, think about better thermal insulation in buildings, for example. That saves energy, right?
Yeah.
Which means lower energy bills for you, the homeowner, over time.
Mm-hmm.
So there are medium and long-term savings.
That's a great point. The financial side isn't always the first thing you think of. So are we seeing these materials used more widely now? It feels like they're popping up more.
Definitely. Yeah, the adoption is picking up speed across a whole range of industries.
Yeah.
Construction, architecture, they're finding greener ways to build. The auto industry is looking at lighter, recyclable parts for efficiency. Even fashion is making strides with eco-friendly fabrics.
Yeah.
And, packaging, electronics, the food industry, even the renewable energy sector itself, they're all part of this shift.
Okay, let's maybe zoom in on a few of those, starting with construction and architecture. What kinds of sustainable materials are really changing things there?
Well, what's fascinating is the sheer variety of solutions. We're seeing more eco-friendly concrete options, which is huge given concrete's carbon footprint.
Right, concrete's a big one.
Then there's timber certified by the FSC Forest Stewardship Council, ensuring it's from responsibly managed forests.
Oh.
Natural insulation like cellulose fiber is becoming more popular. Even reusing materials like recycled asphalt is more common.
Recycled asphalt, huh?
Yeah. And paints that are VOC-free, those volatile organic compounds. Using those means healthier indoor air quality. That's becoming much more standard.
So less carbon in concrete, wood from good sources, seems like clear wins. And healthier paints, better indoor air makes sense. Now, I think the article mentioned something about how these choices affect building sustainability ratings.
Yes, exactly. And that's an important point about how we actually, measure a building's green credentials.
Right.
Many assessment tools now look specifically at the materials used. And these can account for a decent chunk of the score, maybe 10%, sometimes up to 20%.
Wow, okay.
And those requirements, they're generally getting stricter, which is good, but there's a challenge.
Uh-oh. What's that?
Well, there aren't fully unified criteria across all the different assessment systems yet. And that inconsistency can sometimes lead to, well, greenwashing, where materials that aren't that sustainable get marketed as if they are.
Making it hard for people, for you, the listener, to know what's really the best choice.
Exactly. It muddies the waters a bit.
Sounds like a bit of a moving target for architects and builders then.
Oh.
Okay, moving on. The automotive industry. What's driving, haha, no pun intended, the shift there?
Well, the main drivers are pretty clear. Reducing vehicle weight to improve fuel efficiency.
Right, saves gas or extends EV range.
Precisely, which saves you money. Also cutting down pollution and just making vehicles more sustainable overall.
And how are they doing that, material-wise?
We're seeing things like natural fibers, hemp, flax being used in components. They're lighter than traditional plastics.
Hemp and flax. In cars, that's one of those surprising facts you mentioned.
It is, and recycled plastics and metals are being incorporated much more. Plus, of course, developing better, more efficient batteries for EVs is absolutely key.
So lighter materials mean better performance, and using recycled stuff keeps resources in the loop.
You got it. And the industry is also really focusing more on what's called closed-loop manufacturing.
Closed loop.
Yeah, basically recovering materials from old, end-of-life vehicles and reusing them to make new ones, creating a more circular system.
Okay, interesting. Let's switch gears then to something we interact with daily. Fashion. Sustainable fashion. Feels like there's a lot of buzz, but what are the actual material changes happening?
Yeah, the movement there is really centered on finding eco-friendly alternatives to, well, conventional textiles.
Like cotton?
Right. So think natural and organic fibers, organic cotton, hemp again, bamboo, grown with fewer harmful chemicals.
Okay.
Recycled polyester is another big one, often made from things like old plastic bottles. Gives waste a new life.
Turning bottles into clothes.
Exactly. And it's not just the fabrics. The industry is also looking at eco-friendly paints and dyes, maybe from natural sources, and dyeing processes that use way less energy and water.
So the whole life cycle, again, from farm to finished garment. And the benefits seem clear. Less environmental harm, safer clothes for us. Did the article mention those closed-loop systems here too?
It did, yeah. Similar idea to the automotive sector. Designing clothes so they can be easily taken apart, components reused or recycled.
Right.
Minimizing textile waste is huge. And importantly, ensuring ethical labor practices throughout the whole supply chain. That's fundamental too.
Good point.
And we're even seeing some really cool innovations, like using agricultural waste stuff left over from farming as raw material for fabrics.
Wow, turning farm scraps into clothes. That's really thinking outside the box.
And developing new synthetic fibers designed to biodegrade safely.
Okay, now what about packaging? All the boxes and wrappers that come with, well, everything. How are sustainable materials changing that landscape?
Oh, this is a huge area, just given the sheer volume of packaging, right?
Totally.
The focus is definitely on materials that broke down quickly and safely. Think biodegradable, compostable packaging made from things like cornstarch or cellulose.
Cornstarch packaging.
Yeah. And of course, easily recyclable stuff like cardboard and glass are still key. But there's also a big push towards reusable containers, reusable shopping bags.
Right, bringing your own bags.
Exactly. And things like refillable systems or deposit return schemes that really encourage reuse over single use.
So, moving away from stuff that sits in landfills forever towards options that go back to nature or just get used again and again seems like a clear win for reducing waste.
It really does.
Now, electronics, they seem notoriously complex, all those different bits inside. How are sustainable materials making inroads there?
It's definitely a challenge, no doubt.
Yeah.
But progress is happening. We're seeing more use of recycled metals and plastics and device casings, internal parts.
Okay.
Energy efficiency is a huge focus, too. Designing gadgets that sip power, batteries that last longer.
That helps.
And the idea of modular and repairable electronics is gaining steam. Think phones you can upgrade parts of or easily fix.
Instead of just throwing it out?
Exactly. Extends the lifespan, makes maintenance easier, and ultimately means less e-waste.
So less mining for new stuff, devices lasting longer, less junk. Good. The article also briefly touched on food and renewable energy. Any quick hits there?
Yeah, briefly. In food, it's largely about that sustainable packaging we just talked about, plus materials used in sustainable farming itself. And obviously, the growth of organic food options fits here, too.
Yeah, okay.
And energy. In renewable energy, the focus is on using recycled and recyclable materials in the solar panels and wind turbines themselves.
Making the green tech even greener.
Right. And developing more sustainable, maybe recyclable batteries for energy storage. It's about making the whole clean energy cycle more responsible material-wise.
It's really encouraging, actually, seeing how many different areas are embracing this. Now, the article also laid out 6 key research fields for analyzing these materials, right? Could you give us a quick rundown?
Sure. The researchers suggested looking at sustainable materials through 6 main lenses, basically. First, their environmental impact across the whole life cycle. Second, their performance and durability, how well they work, how long they last.
Makes sense.
Third, economic efficiency, the cost factor. Fourth, health and safety implications. Fifth, social sustainability, things like ethical sourcing, fair labor.
Right, the human side.
Exactly. And finally, number 6 is implementation, and use the practicalities of actually using these materials at scale.
So it's a pretty comprehensive way to look at it, to really understand the full picture. Now, the article also got into recent advancements, the really cutting-edge stuff in designing these materials. Sounds exciting.
Oh, absolutely. This is where some really cool innovation is happening. One big area is biomimicry.
By what?
Biomimicry, basically taking inspiration from nature to design materials.
Like how?
Well, imagine materials that mimic how lotus leaves clean themselves.
Yeah.
Super water repellent.
Whoa.
You can use that in architecture, transportation. Less cleaning, less maintenance needed. It's clever stuff.
That is clever. What else?
Nanotechnology is another hot field. Manipulating materials at the, nanoscale lets us enhance their properties, make them stronger, better insulators. Think nanocellulose or graphene composites, boosting efficiency in solar cells or batteries.
Using the super tiny to make big improvements. Okay.
Then there's additive manufacturing, 3D printing.
Right, 3D printing.
Transforming how we make things. Using biodegradable bioplastics, recycled polymers, you can create highly customized parts with very little waste.
Customized, less waste. Nice.
Those closed-loop systems we mentioned, they're gaining momentum too, designing materials specifically so they can be easily taken apart and recycled or composted.
Designing for the end of life from the start.
Exactly. And finally, lots of progress in sustainable composite materials, especially for renewable energy. Think recycled metals and polymers in wind turbine blades or solar panel frames, even developing battery electrolytes that are recyclable or biodegradable.
Wow, 3D printing parts from recycled plastic. Designing for easy recycling. The potential feels huge. But let's talk practicality. The cost. That's often the sticking point, isn't it? Are these sustainable options usually more expensive?
That's a really, really important question. And the article tackles it. Yes, sometimes the initial upfront cost might be higher than conventional stuff.
Okay, yeah.
But, and this is crucial, you have to look at the long-term picture, the life cycle cost.
Ah, okay. Explain that.
Well, for example, using cost-effective phase change materials in something like a solar dryer, it might improve overall sustainability and lower running costs over time.
So saves money later.
Right. Or composite materials for insulation, they can be affordable and save you energy costs year after year. And these life cycle analyses, they're increasingly showing that some innovative sustainable materials like lightweight cements with nano additives can actually lead to lower overall costs, both environmentally and financially in the long run.
Really? Lower costs?
Potentially, yeah. Even reusing construction waste, maybe some initial logistical hurdles, but long-term. Big savings on disposal fees and buying new materials.
Okay.
And one study even showed that these concrete-filled aluminum columns could be cheaper than traditional steel in some cases. So it's not just the sticker price, it's the total cost over the material's life.
So look beyond the initial price tag. Think energy savings, less waste disposal cost, how long it lasts. That makes a lot more economic sense when you put it that way.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what's the big picture, the key message you want people, you the listener, to take away?
I think the core message is really this. Sustainable materials aren't just some niche trend. They're absolutely fundamental to building a more sustainable and responsible future for everyone. They offer so many benefits, less environmental impact, conserving resources, potential long-term savings, even health benefits.
But it's not all smooth sailing yet, is it? The article mentioned limitations too.
No, definitely not all solved. There are hurdles. That initial cost and just, widespread availability can still be tricky for some materials.
Right.
And recycling some of these newer, complex materials, that's still being figured out. The infrastructure isn't always there yet. And we definitely need more large-scale, real-world testing for long-term performance data.
So what needs to happen then to really push this forward?
Well, moving forward, doing those thorough life cycle assessments is going to be critical. really understanding the full impact.
Okay.
We need more investment in field testing, proper cost-benefit analysis, and honestly, just much more collaboration. Researchers, industry, policymakers, everyone needs to work together.
Driving innovation, creating the right conditions.
Exactly. To get these materials adopted widely.
It really sounds like a collective effort is needed. And maybe for you, the listener, here's a thought to chew on. How do the materials in your life, the place you live, the clothes you wear, the things you buy, how do they fit into this bigger picture, this shift towards sustainability? Definitely something to think about beyond just this conversation.
Absolutely.
Well, our sincere thanks to our expert for guiding us through all that. Really valuable insights.
My pleasure. It was a great discussion.
We really hope this deep dive gave you a clear, engaging, and hopefully not too overwhelming understanding of sustainable materials.
Hope so, too.
If anything we talked about sparked your interest, a specific material, an industry, we definitely encourage you to dig a bit deeper, explore it further.
There's always more to learn.
For sure. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into some fascinating territory. Until then, thanks for joining us.